So the hinge pin, I want to drive that out completely. I'll drive it down from the top. Yeah, it's moving. This is a punch that's designed for pushing out pins from watch straps, I believe. It's not very strong, but it fits. If I can get it down a little bit further, I can get pliers on the end of that and pull that out. Right, I've got that much of the pin out now. I may well be able to pull it the rest of the way. Not today. Alright, let me put a little bit of solvent down here to smooth the passage and try again. Oh, let's try again. Yep, it's out. That gets my door off the camera, and the next task is to get the leather off the door, because the leather's got to come off anyway if I'm going to deal with those ice bumps. First I want to see if it's going to lift for me. The leather won't be stuck evenly all the way down. At the ends here we're sitting over chromed brass. In the middle it'll be sitting over aluminium. And the glue doesn't usually behave the same way over both surfaces. Here I'm trying to scrape underneath the leather so that I can get it off without stretching it. Leather can stretch easily but it doesn't go back, particularly when it's old and dry like this. And you'll end up with a lousy fit if you've stretched the leather to any great extent. The stretching is what happens with those ice bumps. It's very hard, if not impossible, to get ice bumps to lay dead flat. Alright, well I've got that peeled back. This will probably peel right off now. There you can see one of the ice bumps there. I've just got to one. See how much of this green crap there's under there? It's some corrosion product. Just similar metals fuel that, so they've got the aluminium camera back and nickel plated brass rivets. There will be residual chemicals in the leather from the tanning process, and then you just need a little bit of moisture to get everything going. Got to be very careful at the ends of the leather here. It may be skived down. It's where the leather's been thinned out. If it has been skived down, it's easily torn, of course, but it's very thin there. So just checking this carefully. Here we're sitting over chrome nickel plate, here chrome plated brass, and it'll be stuck there firmer than it was on the aluminium. I'm trying to get underneath that leather. scraping my scalpel down between the metal and the leather. Hanging on by a tiny bit here. There we go. So that's off. These bumps, as I say, they probably won't go away, but I'll certainly do my best. Typically what happens is you end up with a slight dimple there when you glue things back down. All that green crap's got to come off there. Let's have a look at this door. That big lump of crap. Everywhere there are rivets, that tends to be where it pops up. And it's a waxy stuff. Chemically it might be a soap. So I'll just busy myself making sure I get that waxy crap off there, and I'll give this a light scuff down to make sure that the surface is relatively flat. I'm not going to fight with it and try and get this back to the metal. That glue layer is very thick. It looks like shellac, but it's probably not shellac. I think it's much more likely it's a resorcinol type formaldehyde setting adhesive. It's very hard. Scraping it off and getting it all off neatly is very difficult indeed. But what I'm going to do is remove the paint from these edges here, the damaged paint right on the edges, get that back to clean metal, mask the rest of the door, repaint those edges, and I'll show you how I go about doing that. First, I think I'll clean this door up a little bit. I'll just use some naphtha here, and I'm going to clean up all of those green greasy patches. There's some rubbish in the rivets. The back of the rivets are hollow there, and there'll be some rubbish in those hollows. Just flick that out. And on the rivets at the hinge end, there'll be the same thing going on there, just to a lesser extent. So here I'm just getting rid of anything loose. That'll probably do. Now I want to turn my attention to getting those paint off those edges. The paint came off in the first place because they did a lousy job of painting them. Getting paint to stick to aluminium is not an easy thing on a good day. What you need to do is use an etch primer, which will give it some tooth so that the paint will stay there. I'm going to use some acetone to strip that paint from the edges now. Let's see if this will do the job for me. If not, I'll have to find something else. Yeah, it looks like it's coming away. Yeah, look at that. That's not hard to encourage that paint off. Right, well, I'll just work my way along here. I'll do the top edge here too. I won't do any of the inside. that's sound enough, and I certainly don't need to be repainting the whole camera. Right back when that's clean. Well, this paint on the leather on the front of the camera and on everything else on the front of the camera has specks. I want to see what will lift them off, if anything. Well, mechanically they're scraping away. I suspect that's just because they're on a dirty surface. They're not exactly dissolving. I'll try something a bit stronger. Okay, it's coming off now. Probably some of the colour of the leather will be coming off with it, but at least the paint will be gone. Alright, so that little panel I've got off, I got the paint off that, and I was using this CRC Heavy Duty Lectra Clean. So I'll just carry on, get the rest of that paint off the front, and I'll bring you back. Well, that was a good result. All the white dots have gone. I'll do the front door next, and I don't expect to have much trouble doing the likes of the top cover, because that's all metal. It's more the leather I'm concerned about, getting it off that without doing serious damage. Well, the paint specs are history, but the colour's not the best, is it? So I'll try building up some colour on this leather now. Here I'm using some renovating polish, which is very heavy on the pigments. It's a soft wax, it's chocolate with pigments. Usually does a pretty good job of colouring leather. Another thing you can do is you can use, if you can find a black marker pen that doesn't leave purple behind when you write on metal. It's a, if you one that looks matte black, you can use that, colour the leather with the pen, and then once you've coloured it and it's all dry, then dress it with some wax polish and you'll get a very good result. That leather, I can feel that the surface of that leather, it's not at all shiny, it's quite flat. But I dare say if I buff that with a brush, that'll come up okay. So there you go, that's an improvement. That's a big improvement. It's not exactly jet black, but it's pretty flaming good. So basically that's the treatment that the rest of the leather will get. It was worse probably on the front than anywhere else. But these panels here, come on video camera, keep up. These panels and the leather for the back are also somewhat faded. The front door was certainly the worst. They must have caught the brunt of the light over time. Anyway, that's for later. Well, while I'm waiting for the mechanical components to clean in the ultrasonic cleaner, I'll start cleaning up this body casting. It's not too bad. A little bit of dust and grit, dried grease. Generally it's pretty good. This little revolving gear at the top there, that pinion, that's riveted in place. you can't get that out. It has to be cleaned in place. One handy way of dealing with something like that is to use a stiff paintbrush and just revolve it and flick the paintbrush across it to drag any dust and grit out of the teeth. I'm just looking at the state of that now. There's not normally anything to go wrong with this. Were that pinion to fail, it would certainly cause a problem, and because it's riveted in place there, it would mean effectively drilling out the tail of the rivet, removing the gear, finding a replacement gear, and probably turning a new rivet. But from a practical point of view, that would be an awful lot of work, and it would be much easier and make much more sense, since any replacement gear was only going to come from a organ donor, to just simply use the body from the organ donor and then not have to worry about replacing anything. There are two springs down here, here and here. Their job is to help pop the front slightly. As you know, the Retina cameras were never self-erecting. The best that you could hope for is that you press the button and that the front pops off the catch, and then you can lift it forward with your thumb. And those springs help achieve that. Occasionally you may find a camera where one of those is broken, and as with most things that are 70 years old, parts are only going to come from an organ donor. It's certainly not something I've replaced very frequently. So I'm just cleaning all the recesses here to make sure I've got rid of any dust and grit. And there's some odd marking in the back here. I don't know whether you can see it. Like a faint yellow line at that point. I think that was a repair sticker once upon a time. It sat in here and it's gone. There's a little bit of history that we'll never know about now. Well, that's looking pretty good. And while I've got it at this stage, I may put some glue in here where this leather's delaminated. That's where it split when I was peeling it off. I might glue that back down so that's not in any danger of getting further damage while I'm working on the camera. I'll just start with a little blob of adhesive. That's contact adhesive. It's what I use to glue the leatherettes down. ADOS F2, which you won't find anywhere unless you happen to live in New Zealand. So I'll just make sure I've got that on both surfaces there where that leather's cut. I'll just put that aside for a minute, that'll tack up, and then I can just press that together and that'll close that up. That damage will be dealt to. Alright, a couple of minutes have passed, that'll probably do. I'll just press that leather together. And that's no longer flapping, so that's not in any danger of getting damaged. And when I glue the rest of the leather back down, that'll be invisible for all practical purposes. Okay, well that's just about done in the body there. I'm just going to give that just wipe out around the cavity there with a paintbrush, and around the bellows too, just to remove any loose dust. And here I'll just check the state of the bellows, make sure that there's no sign of the bellows coming adrift from the body casting. It looks very secure and there's no sign of corrosion in there. If I was seeing corrosion anywhere on the camera body, but in particular if I was seeing any white corrosion around those edges there, it would be a warning sign that corrosion was happening on the aluminium. Most likely it would get down underneath the adhesive and cause the adhesive to let go. I'm not seeing any of that. That all looks good. So I'm quite pleased with the state of that. So that body casting is really ready for me to start reassembling the mechanical components back into it. But I don't suppose I've cleaned the struts mechanism yet, have I? So I'll probably need to do that.